There's a part of every pig that most folks now throw straight in the bin. The leaf fat from around the kidneys, the thick white slab off the back, the soft trimmings that fall away from every cut as the knife works. It all goes in the trash. The single most useful thing that animal had to give, the thing that carried whole families through hard winters for hundreds of years, swept out with the scraps because nobody ever told the person holding the knife what it was worth. Now, picture my cellar. Down those stairs, there is a shelf of white stoneware crocks with their lids on, and they are full of clean lard, white as fresh snow, that my wife Esther and I rendered from one hog last autumn. That lard will fry our eggs and our potatoes. It will grease the cake tins and seal the potted meat. It will soften a pair of cracked hands in the dead of February and waterproof a pair of work boots come spring from one pig for the better part of a year. And it cost us nothing but an afternoon beside a low fire and the patience to let the work happen slow. My name is Elias Yoder. I am Amish and I farm in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. My family has rendered our own lard every autumn for as long as anyone can remember. In the same week we butcher, and the same way my grandfather did it and his father before him. Today, I'm going to show you exactly how to take the fat off one pig and turn it into a whole year of clean cooking fat. Slow and plain in the right order so that a careful person of ordinary sense can do the whole of it in a single afternoon. I will show you which fat to use for what, because there is more than one kind and they are not the same. I will show you how to render it so it comes out white and sweet and not scorched. How to store it so it keeps a year with no refrigerator at all. And what to do with every last scrap so that nothing at all gets, And I will be honest with you the whole way through because honest is the only way I know how to do this. I will tell you plainly how much lard one pig truly gives because there is foolishness told about that. I will tell you the one mistake that turns good white fat into something rancid and bitter you have to throw out. And near the end, I'm going to tell you the part that ought to make you a little angry, which is how a perfectly good food that every farmhouse in this country once made for free got pushed off the kitchen table and replaced with something sold to you in a tin. Stay with me. Let me start with what lard actually is, because once you see it plain, the rest of this makes simple sense. Lard is nothing more than pig fat that has been gently melted down so the pure fat runs clear and clean away from the little bits of meat and skin and water that are caught up in it. That is the whole of it. You take the raw fat, which is soft and white and streaked through with tissue. You warm it low and slow until the fat melts out, and you strain off the clean liquid fat. When it cools, it sets up firm and white, and that is your lard. No chemicals, no factory, just heat and patience and a piece of cloth to strain it through. Now, here's the first thing most folks never learn. There's more than one kind of fat on a pig, and knowing which is the whole difference between a lard you bake a pie crust with and a lard you fry your potatoes in. The finest fat on the whole animal is what they call the leaf fat. It is the soft, crumbly fat that lies around the kidneys and along the inside of the loin. It comes away in big soft sheets, almost like a leaf, which is where the name comes from. This is the prize. When you render leaf fat on its own, low and careful, you get the whitest, cleanest, most neutral lard there is. It has almost no pork taste at all. This is your baking lard, your pastry lard, the one that makes a pie crust so flaky and tender that no butter and no store shortening can touch it. A pig only gives you so much of it, a few pounds, so you keep it separate and you treat it like the treasure it is. The second kind is the back fat, sometimes called fat back. It is the thick, firm slab of white fat that runs along the back of the pig under the skin. There is a good deal of it, and this is the bulk of what you will render. Back fat gives you a fine all-purpose cooking lard. It carries just a little more pork flavor than the leaf fat, which is no fault at all. It is wonderful for frying, for searing, for greasing a pan, for everyday cooking. Most of the crocks on my cellar shelf are back fat lard. That is your workhorse. Then there are the trimmings, the odd bits of fat that come off every cut as you butcher. You save all of that too, and it goes into the cooking lard. And there is one more, the caul fat, a lacy thin web of fat that wraps the organs. My people use that whole to wrap a lean roast and keep it moist more than we render it. But the leaf, the back fat, and the trimmings, those are your lard. And a single pig gives you a great deal of all three. Now, let me be honest with you about how much you actually get, because this is where the foolishness lives. A typical market hog these days, raised lean the modern way, will give you somewhere from 30 to 50 pounds of fat to render, and that renders down to maybe 25 to 40 pounds of finished lard. I will not give you one perfect number because it depends entirely on the pig. A lean, modern hog bred for chops gives less. An old-fashioned lard hog, the heavy breeds the old folks kept for exactly this, gives far more, sometimes 60 or 80 pounds of fat off one animal. But hear me plain. Even on the lean side, 25 or 30 pounds of lard is a year of cooking fat for an ordinary household, with plenty left over for a batch of soap and a tin for the boots. One pig, that is real, and that is honest. Anybody who tells you one pig gives you a thimble is wrong, and anybody who promises 100 pounds off a market hog is selling you a dream. And I know most of you watching are not about to butcher a hog in the back garden. You do not have to. This is the part the thrifty cook should hear. Pork fat is one of the cheapest things at any butcher counter when they will sell it at all, and a great many butchers will hand it to you for next to nothing or even for free because they are only going to throw it out. You walk in, you ask kindly for leaf fat or back fat, you tell them you mean to render it, and more often than not, you will walk out with a heavy bag of the best cooking fat there is for $1 or $2 a pound, sometimes for nothing. So even a person in a townhouse with no land at all can do everything I'm about to show you. Get the fat, render it on the kitchen stove, and fill your own jars. Now to the work itself, and it truly is simple. The first step is to cut the fat up small, because the smaller the pieces, the faster and more completely the fat will melt out of them. You want pieces about the size of a sugar cube or smaller, and here's a small trick that saves you a great deal of trouble. Cold fat cuts clean and easy. Warm fat is soft and slippery and smears under the knife. So chill your fat good and cold first, or even put it in the freezer for an hour until it is firm but not frozen solid, and then it cuts like a dream. If you have a meat grinder, even better, run the cold fat through the grinder and it renders even faster because every piece is small. Cut it small. That is half the battle. And remember what I told you, render your leaf fat separately from your back fat. Keep them in 2 pots or do them one after the other, but do not mix them. You went to the trouble of saving that fine leaf fat for your pie crusts, so do not muddy it up with the everyday back fat. 2 pots, 2 grades, 2 jobs. There are 2 ways to render, and you should know the difference. The first is the dry way. You just put the cut fat in a heavy pot over low heat with nothing else and let it melt. The dry way gives you a lard with a little more color and a little nuttier, more pork-like flavor. That is fine, even nice for your everyday cooking lard. The second is the wet way, and this is the old trick for the whitest, cleanest lard. You put a little water in the bottom of the pot with the fat at the start, just enough to cover the bottom, half a cup or so. That water keeps the very bottom from getting too hot and scorching the fat before it has melted. As the fat renders, the water slowly cooks away to nothing, and you are left with pure, clean lard that never got a chance to brown. For your prize leaf fat, the fat you mean to bake with, I would use the wet way every time. For your everyday cooking lard, either way does fine. Now here is the single most important thing I will tell you in this whole video, and it is the one mistake that ruins more lard than anything else: low and slow. The heat must be gentle. Lard wants to be coaxed out, not forced. If you crank the heat up high to hurry it, the fat browns, Then it scorches, and scorched fat turns bitter and yellow and smells burnt, and the smell never leaves it. You want the gentlest heat, just enough to keep the fat slowly melting and barely bubbling, like the laziest simmer you ever saw. It takes a few hours. That is right. That is how it is supposed to be. You stir it now and again with a wooden spoon. You keep the heat low, and you let time do the work. The person who rushes lard ends up with a pot of bitter brown grease. The person who is patient ends up with snow white lard. Slow is the whole secret. So how do you know when it is done? Watch the little bits, the solid pieces of tissue floating in the melting fat. At first they float, pale and soft. As the rendering goes on, they slowly give up the last of their fat, and they shrink, and they turn golden brown, and one by one they sink to the bottom when most of those bits have gone golden and sunk, and the bubbling has gone quiet because nearly all the water and fat has cooked out of them. Your lard is done. The liquid fat itself should be clear like clean cooking oil, not cloudy. Pull it off the heat then. Do not wait for the bits to go dark, brown, or black, because by then you are starting to scorch and color the good fat you worked so hard for. Now you strain it, and you do this while it is still hot and liquid, because once it cools, it sets up solid and you cannot pour it. Lay a piece of clean cloth, cheesecloth, or a bit of clean muslin over a wire strainer set over your clean jars or crocks. Then carefully ladle or pour the hot fat through the cloth. The cloth catches every little brown bit and every speck of tissue, and what runs through into your jar is pure, clean lard, golden while it is hot, and it will turn white as it cools. Strain it, and this matters more than you would think, because any little bits of meat or tissue left in the fat are exactly what will go off and turn your lard rancid down the road. The cleaner you strain it, the longer it keeps. Strain it twice if you want it perfect. Now, those golden brown bits left behind in the strainer and the bottom of the pot, do not you dare throw them out. Those are cracklings, and they are a treat the old folks prized. They are the crisp little bits of rendered tissue and salted while they are hot. They are wonderful to eat by the handful. My grandmother stirred them into cornbread, and that crackling cornbread is one of the great tastes of my childhood. You can crumble them over greens, over potatoes, into biscuits, and whatever you truly cannot use, the chickens will fight over. Nothing about that pig goes to waste, right down to the last crisp scrap in the bottom of the pot. Waste nothing. That is the oldest rule there is. Now to the part that lets one pig feed you for a whole year. The storage. You pour your hot strained lard into clean, dry jars or crocks. Glass canning jars work beautifully, and so do the old stoneware crocks. As it cools, it goes from clear gold to firm and white, and it will keep a remarkably long time if you mind a few simple things. The enemies of stored fat are 4: heat, light, air, and leftover bits. So you store your lard cool, you store it dark, you keep the containers as full as you can so there is little air on top, and you strain it clean so there are no bits in it to go off. Get those 4 right, and your lard keeps. In a cool, dark cellar or pantry, well-strained lard keeps 6 months to a year easily. Your leaf lard, the cleanest of all, keeps the longest because there is the least in it to spoil. If you have a colder place, colder still, it keeps longer yet. And lard freezes wonderfully if you have the means, lasting years that way with no change at all. The old way, the no power way, is simply the cool, dark cellar, the same root cellar that holds the rest of the winter stores. That steady cool of the earth between the high 30s and low 40s is what kept the lard crocks sweet on this farm for 200 years before there was ever a freezer to be had. And let me tell you how to know if a batch has gone off, because you should never use rancid fat. Good lard smells clean and faintly of pork, or of almost nothing at all. Rancid lard smells sharp and waxy like old paint or a wax crayon, and it tastes bitter. If you ever open a crock and it smells like that, you do not use it for food. It will not poison you, but it tastes terrible and it will ruin whatever you cook. That is your sign you let air or heat or light at it, or you did not strain it clean enough. Render the next batch cleaner, store it cooler and darker, and it will keep. A little pinch of salt in the fat helps some folks, and there are old hands who tuck the crock in the very darkest, coolest corner and never have a bit go off in a year. Now, let me tell you everything that one shelf of white crocks will do for you over the year, because this is where you see what you have really made. First and foremost, cooking. Lard is one of the finest cooking fats there is. It can take a high heat without smoking, so it fries beautifully. Fried potatoes in lard, fried chicken in lard, an egg fried in a little lard of a cold morning, there is nothing like it. It has fed working people who needed real food for their long days since long before anyone worried about a tin of oil. Then there is the baking, and this is where your leaf lard earns its keep. A pie crust made with leaf lard is flakier and more tender than any crust made with butter or with the store shortening. Biscuits made with lard rise tall and light. Old-fashioned cakes, fried donuts, a good pastry, all of them were made with lard for generations, and they were better for it. If you have only ever baked with the tin from the store, the first pie crust you make with your own clean leaf lard will surprise you. And it is not only food. A bar of good hard soap is made from lard and lye. And it is a fine white soap that has washed plain families for centuries, which I will show you how to make another day. Rubbed into leather, lard softens and waterproofs your boots and your harness. A thin coat wiped on a cast iron pan and warmed in the oven seasons it black and slick and rust-proof. In a hard pinch, lard will even burn in a simple lamp to give you light. One animal rendered down with care gives you your cooking, your baking, your soap, your leather dressing, your pan seasoning, and your light. That is the whole point of the old ways. One thing does many jobs and nothing is wasted. Now, I want to take a moment because this is the part that matters, and it is bigger than a pot of fat. For hundreds of years, every farmhouse in this country rendered its own lard, and lard was simply what you cooked with. It was free. It came off your own animal, and it did every job I just named. And then, a little over 100 years ago, something changed. The companies that pressed oil out of cottonseed had a problem. Cottonseed oil was a waste product of the cotton trade, cheap and plentiful, and they wanted a way to sell it. So they found a way to harden that liquid seed oil into a solid white fat that looked, sitting in its tin, very much like lard, and they set about selling it. But how do you get a nation of women who have rendered lard their whole lives, whose mothers and grandmothers rendered lard, to buy a tin of hardened cottonseed oil instead? You convince them that the thing they have always made for free is old-fashioned, crude, behind the times. The advertisements told the modern housewife that lard was dirty and that this new white fat in the clean tin was pure and scientific and modern. They gave away cookbooks where every single recipe called for the tin. Slowly, over a generation, it worked. The kettle of rendering fat that had stood in every autumn kitchen disappeared, and in its place came a tin you bought at the store again and again and again for the rest of your life. And here is the quiet truth of it. The same truth I keep coming back to on this channel. There is no money in a fat you render yourself for free from an animal you already own. There is enormous money in a tin you must buy again every month forever. Lard did not lose its place on the table because something better came along. It lost its place because there was no one with an advertising budget to defend it. Nobody could put a brand on the fat off your own pig. Nobody could sell you a tin of a thing you already knew how to make. So the knowledge was not destroyed. It was just outspent, drowned out by 100 years of advertisements for things in tins, until a whole nation forgot that the best cooking fat there is comes off the animal for nothing. Now, I'm going to be honest and careful here because I will not tell you a thing I cannot stand behind. I am a farmer, not a doctor, and I am not going to stand here and tell you lard cures what ails you or that any one food is magic. I will not do that. What I will tell you is plain and true. Lard is real food. It is the simple rendered fat of an animal, the same food that fed the people who cleared this land and built these barns and raised big, healthy families on hard work and plain cooking. Render it clean, store it well, and use it sensibly in your cooking the way your great-grandmother did, and you have a good, honest fat that costs you almost nothing and wastes nothing. That is all I am claiming, and that much I will stand behind all day. So here is what I want you to do. You do not need a pig, and you do not need a farm to start. This week, stop in at a butcher counter and ask if they have any pork fat, leaf fat if they have it, back fat if they do not. Ask kindly, tell them you mean to render it, and see what they charge you, which will likely be very little or nothing at all. Take it home, chill it good and cold, cut it up small, and render it low and slow in your heaviest pot until the bits go golden and sink. Strain it clean through a cloth into a couple of clean jars. Salt the cracklings and eat them warm, and set your jars of white lard in the coolest, darkest cupboard you have. Then bake one pie crust with it and taste the difference for yourself. And tell me in the comments below, have you ever rendered your own lard, or did your grandmother or your grandfather do it? And what do you remember of it? And when you make your first batch, come back and tell me what you cooked with it first, the fried potatoes, the pie crust, the biscuits, or the soap. I read every single one of these, and the old recipes and the memories you all share are the very reason I keep doing this. Next time, since we now have a cellar shelf full of good white lard, I'm going to show you the next natural step, how my wife Esther turns that very lard into hard white bars of soap with nothing but the lard, a little lye, and some patience. The same soap that has washed plain families for as long as there have been plain families. It is the natural step after today. Until then, render your own, waste nothing, and remember the people who built this country with their hands knew things we are only just starting to remember.